before.
You know, it takes a hot. Hi, we're live. Woo! I'm always worried that this thing is not going to turn on. Hi, my name is Ansley Ashe. I'm here with my good friend Kaylin Williamson. Kaylin, you want to introduce yourself to everybody real fast?
Sure. My name, as she said, is Galen Williamson, and I write fiction along with Melanie. We met like over a decade ago now. She does mystery, I do women's fiction. So, and I also do a lot of short stories. I'll be doing a novella series, and I have tons of series on Substack from Pop Culture Playground. And coming soon will be Pursuit for the Pulitzer and more information on my fiction. So, you have all my pop ideas on like what I love in movies and TV, as well as what I'm doing with my own work. So, and as far as I know, we'll be talking about Elementary because I watched it a few weeks ago. And
Yes. Yeah. So two very different people, Ansley and Kaylin. But we were just incredibly different people. But one of the things that we do share in common is Kaylin loves Elementary, and for those of you who read the Substack regularly, you know that I love all things Sherlock Holmes, and Elementary is, of course, the American stateside the fantastic Johnny Lee Miller as Sherlock Holmes in the CBS show Elementary. So, Kaylin, what did you like best about Elementary, and also what I liked the best? But go ahead. So, what did you like the best?
well, I love that Joan is Watson. That instead of having a male sidekick, we get a beautiful female. All the sundresses, all the clothes, all the outfits. And I also love that they never dated, that she was with Mycroft and never Sherlock, no matter how many seasons, how many times they lived together, even with a child involved, never Sherlock. And I like that. I like seeing that friendship. And also, upon rewatching it, now in 2024, and it came out several years ago. Well, no, longer than that now. She was very feminist forward in the show and stood up for herself a lot. And I was like, that's kind of great, especially for that time.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't remember. Like, I feel like Elementary started before I moved north from, not before, after I moved north. So it would have been sometime around. I've lived here 15 years, so like 14 years ago, so 2011, 2012, I think is when it debuted. I just know that Elementary and Sherlock debuted at the same time. Okay, so I also love Elementary for the same reason that Watson is Joan instead of John, but I love it because it takes it. Elementary did this really smart thing where it took these expected mystery tropes, right? Where you have your super smart detective, and then we tend to see them filtered through an intelligent but less genius sidekick, so that us mere mortals can understand how absolutely fantastic and amazing a genius like Sherlock Holmes is. And so you see that trope repeated over and over again, right? Um, Sherlock has Watson, Hercule Poirot has Captain Hastings, Nero Wolfe has Archie Goodwin, right? Like that's just a series of those things. I love that. So we take this thing, and the viewpoint that we see it through isn't, the buddy war hero, whatever. It's a woman, and Elementary did this twice. It took John Watson, Sherlock's best friend, and made his best friend a girl. Awesome, because that's exactly the way that it should do. And I agree, she wore fantastic clothing. And then it took his love interest, Irene Adler, and made her his arch nemesis, Moriarty. And just kind of flipped that again. And like, because there are fans of the original fiction who believe that Sherlock and Moriarty are the same person. And I love the fact that the only person ever to outsmart Sherlock was a woman. Like in the original canon, Arthur Conan Doyle, it's Irene Adler. She does it like the second or the third story in A Scandal in Bohemia. I can't remember exactly where it falls in line, but like it's like the second or the third story that he ever wrote, and it is just genius. And Irene Adler outsmarts Sherlock Holmes, and then she does the thing where she writes to him and tells him how she did it, and he's like, "Oh, that's so." And there afterwards, she was always the woman. And then to have the woman be the arch nemesis, I thought was just brilliant. It's a fantastic twist on anybody who's into Sherlock Holmes. knows who Moriarty is, knows who Irene Adler is, and you're just like, boom, of course, and of course Sherlock is going to be in love with that. So yeah, I thought that was genius.
That makes a lot of sense too, because you have two powerful women, which is really nice to see. And Sherlock himself, compared to Sherlock, the British version that I watched, this guy's more messed up in Elementary. Elementary Sherlock has the drug addiction, all the problems with his personal life, and it's nice to see the more human side of him as opposed to I'm just a genius and I will continue. My flaw is social awkwardness, the end. Whereas in Elementary, he changes. He wants to make friends. He does make friends and he does forgive Mycroft in the end. A little bit too late, but he does get there. And so seeing that character development's really nice because I love developing characters. As you know, with mine, my work is really character driven. Um,
Your work is very character twisty. Yes, I love it. That's one of the things I love most about reading your fiction. Yeah, so I can't wait for you to have more out so I can tell everybody like go by Kaylin stuff. Um,
right.
I thought Elementary was more true to the source material than Sherlock was. Um, I mean, on the other hand, I love Benedict Cumberbatch, like, so don't come at me. Like, I thought the chemistry between Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman was like just really, really there. But as far as the storytelling went, I thought Elementary was more thoughtful. And Johnny Lee Miller has more episodes in Sherlock Holmes than anybody else on the face of the planet. That's how successful Elementary was. So like I just love it.
That's interesting because I didn't read the original series. I just love to watch the detective shows, so I do. And that's interesting to know. Especially, I know there must have been a book about the Baskervilles because both shows had an episode about it.
Right, The Hound of the
So
Baskervilles is one of the classic novels. Yes, so they do have that. I don't know. I like the Sherlock version of that a little bit. I did like Sherlock's version a little bit better than Elementary's, but both are incredibly well treated, and I thought both were interesting twists on the original material. So yeah, I loved them.
that's cool. In the original, were the villains different from in Elementary? If you don't remember, I can tell you. It'll be spoiler alert. I can tell you.
So week to week, so like in the beginning when it was episodic, those were all made up. It's just a basic it follows your basic police procedural. I will say the thing that was the same is that they took Gregson, and a lot of them use Lestrade as the British police counterpart to Sherlock, the one that comes up and shows up from Scotland Yard. In the original source material, Gregson shows up half the time and Lestrade shows up half the time. But Gregson is smarter as a detective. So like when he comes in, his cases are a little bit more twistier and Lestrade. So I get why more writers went with Lestrade because it's a little bit better of a foil. But I thought it was really interesting that they were like, oh, we keep leaving Gregson out. So they took Gregson and made Gregson the New York detective.
Okay.
That I thought was an interesting treatment, especially because Gregson as a detective in the original series is just a little bit smarter than Lestrade, and it just kind of gives us a little bit more to talk about.
In Elementary, he's definitely smarter. Lestrade is treated barely as a detective. Really, he existed just for Sherlock to solve the
to be,
crimes and not
and to
have to
be
go
pretty,
public. Yeah.
and to be pretty if you're into that archetype, right? Like like they didn't choose like a just a normal everyday British actor, like whatever one of those poof poof, aside. No, they chose a guy with a square jaw, and like, and if you're into the silver fox with the graying hair, and like he was there to be pretty. He's like, oh yeah, he's a pretty detective. Like he was there to be pretty. Whereas, but I mean, then I'm a friend. I'm such a fan of Aiden Quinn anyway. So like, I think he does so much work. I've been a fan of his for a really long time. So I was really, really drawn to Elementary because I was a fan of Aiden Quinn. I was a fan of Johnny Lee Miller. I was a fan of Lucy Liu. So like, I was already a fan of those people before I started watching the show, and then just to see this thing Like I grew up reading the Sherlock Holmes story. Just see this thing that I grew up and I love so much being treated both with respect and a breath of fresh air and to be modernized. I thought was really great. Sherlock Holmes, just so you know, has had of all fictional characters has had the most impact on the real world of any other fictional character ever because he changed the way the police did their job. Because Arthur Conan Doyle asked himself this question: what if police work were more scientifically based, like medicine is? What if we gave it the same treatment? And that's how he created Sherlock Holmes. And the people who were solving crimes were like, yeah, okay, that works. So
Watching Elementary again, I liked how well shot it was. It was very well done. And if you listen to the songs, that was also incredibly well done, where you're like, wow, I don't know who was on that sound mixing. They did great. They had Long Haul No. They had, I have a list. I had to find the list.
we'll
Um,
have to come back with the list next time, right?
I know, right? There's a list on Spotify that someone made of Elementary songs, but I know Long Haul No was one of my favorite. And then there was another one that I was like, wow, I'd have to click away to find it. But but listening to the songs, and it's great to have like SoundCloud or something up to be like just the end scene. They always nailed the end scene song. And you're like, yeah, I want this one. And like you mentioned,
They,
Lucy Lou's outfits were really good. Very, I think they brought a lot of modern aesthetic to detective work. Like instead of like tweed, the tweed, the elbow patches.
the
Um,
bland suit or the bland, gonna just the
they
bland suit.
had these like professional to make a professional sundress. Just a shout out to the talent of that because wow, that is something else. And she pulled it off really well. I was like,
I know. I
oh,
like that they dressed Joan like she'd clearly been a doctor, right? And
yes.
like they dressed her like she had the money to dress the way she wanted to dress. She could afford anything, right? And when she wanted to look professional, she looked professional, but she looked equally fantastic. This is a woman for whom appearances mattered, right? Like she wanted to be taken seriously. So even if she was like going to be like a burglaring or like any of the like covert stuff, right? And she's in the dark or whatever, she still manages to look like both like she could blend in and like fantastic at the same time, right? And like that's a tough aesthetic to do because if you make them look too fabulous, then it's like, well,
You
everybody's
stand
going to
out.
see her because she looks like, oh, is that a Hollywood actress posing to do your normal break-in, your normal stakeout? Like, no, I don't believe that, right? Like they don't, but she did. She managed to do it. So I like that. I like that. Clearly, dress was something that was important to Joan, but of course, like that's not what she's there for. So she doesn't talk about it. She just does it. I like that.
Yeah, it was nice. You know what's crazy? As much as I love clothes, I feel like Johnny's clothes did not stand out to me as much, but I'm not a huge fashionista,
I
so
don't
maybe
think
it
I
was
can
high
remember
end.
a single. I can remember like 5 or 6 outfits that Joan wore, and a couple that. What's the one who played um
Marcus?
Um, yeah, no, the one who played Irene Adler is the same Marjorie or whatever.
Oh, okay.
She played the chick in Game of Thrones. The
Oh, okay.
I have to. I can't remember her name off the top. I just have a bit. But anyway, I can remember 5 or 6 outfits. I can remember like a couple of Irene Adlers, and I can remember 5 or 6 from Lucy Liu, like a couple of sundresses. The suit she wore in that very first episode, where she's got the heels and the suit, and she's like taking the assignment from Mycroft, like that was, just genius. I can remember that. I can't remember. I think there's like one dark blue, navy blue sweater that Johnny Lee Miller wore in the show. I think that's the only thing I remember. And that's only because I thought, like, oh my gosh, they put him in an Aran sweater, which is so totally something a British person would have. It's so interesting that it's in navy blue. And that's it. And I think the only reason why I remembered it is because clearly it was a hand knit sweater and I knit. And it was in my favorite color. I think like if it hadn't been for either of those two, I probably wouldn't have even noticed it at all. So I do think
I
Lucy's
do. I
wear did
try to notice it for characters as well, like while writing characters. So over the weekend, I had to look up so many wedding dresses because I'm writing a story with wedding dresses. So you're like, I need to start noticing clothes more and more and more. Because when you're describing it in a book, you really have to be specific. You can't just like the sundress. What is that? Like,
I know
oh,
what
the polka dot one, the interesting shape, and Lucy Liu had very unique shapes in there with the dresses. I was like, oh, challenge. Um, I don't know how long you spend on dressing your detectives, but I can tell you it took me 2 hours to pick out three wedding dresses.
Well, so Allison is a stay-at-home mom, so it's like jeans, but then like I have to put in like what is she pairing it with? So is she pairing it with like a button-up shirt? So she wants to kind of look nice and casual. Is she doing just like is it jeans and a sweatshirt because that's what moms wear and that's mostly what she does? Is it jeans and a sweater? How warm is it outside? She lives in the mountains. The temperature really fluctuates. Does she need a cardigan? Like, yeah, I have to put some thought into Allison. Charlie, on the other hand, Charlie is a completely different animal. She always, unless she's wearing her police uniform, she has this idea of a uniform inside her head, which is a white suit. So she's always in a
All
white
white.
suit. So like, yeah, so I don't have to give any thought to her or, and then most of the cops she hangs out with are just they're patrol cops. So they're in their patrol uniforms. So like I don't have to think about that a lot. I have to think about it more as to like um the people who show up, what are they wearing? Doesn't matter what they're wearing. Put my fingers up so the audience can see. It doesn't matter what they're wearing. What does what they're wearing say about them? Do I have something to say through their clothes, right? So like in Jewelry Heist, there are a couple of I think a couple of the outfits that Clyde's wife Jerry wears are described because she's basically taking all this money and she's spending it on things like her facial treatments, her plastic surgery, her fabulous wardrobe. Like she is just spending through his money. And so I kind of have a little bit to say about that there. Whereas, like some of the other ones I did. Oh, the most memorable one though is is the kid I don't remember her name. Is the kid from New Year's resolution. I don't know, I can't remember her name. But
Oh, I
the one
remember reading about her.
right, the girl who lived across the street, right, and she's got the anarchy sweater on and the like the whatever, and like she's like I'm really saying something about how goth she is or whatever. Her outfit was more important. Like I had to like really think about that, and I put those layers in there. And then Charlie like correctly looks at this teenager, everything this teenager is wearing, sums her up, and then is like, oh, but you're trying to be older than you are, and then just totally just just tosses out a word that she knows the kid isn't going to understand like she can, and then just walks away while the kid is confused. That was one of the incidences where like the clothing really did matter. So like I do have to think about it, but I don't always, but I do sometimes.
I do. My characters, they're such crazy, intriguing people sometimes. I really do think about what they're wearing, what they look like. Like, Chloe from The Shocking Date. And I don't want to give too much away, but that is a wild girl to go on a date with. She has a big personality. Who she ends up with, which Ansley doesn't even know, is also a very crazy guy. It is so much fun, and she is wild. Very much Debbie Jelinski vibes. So when I gave her a wedding, I mean, what am I going to dress her in? She's crazy. And so I went with white and blush red. And I was like, that is so her. You want the iconic white. And at first I was thinking blood red, but that was too much. I was like, no. And then I Googled and Googled, and this beautiful, just blush red underneath it. And I was like, lace with blush red silk underneath. Poofy, gorgeous, big Chloe. Whereas Kiki, who we don't really get to see very much, was just in a long, flowing white silk sheath. And Marnie, who you will see a lot, Marnie, who Ansley has read about, she knows what's coming your way. Marnie does marry someone. I'm not gonna say who. Hopefully not the
I
crazy
don't know.
guy in
I
the
don't
parking
know.
lot.
I know a little bit about Chloe because Kaylin's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with Chloe. She's crazy. So like we get into these late night conversations about like, what the heck am I going to put? And I'm like, I don't know. I like you're the crazy one. I'm not the crazy one. I'm a mom with kids.
Full disclaimer, none of this is real. I swear those men are all safe. Um, Chloe's a danger to society. Marnie's not. Marnie is a sweet girl. But I was like, oh, it's hard. They're all biracial. And I also wanted to give little hints because I felt like when I did not give little hints to culture, and it's hard because I'm doing biracial American. So they're biracial, but they're also very American. So they're not going to show up in full Indian garb or something from one of the other cultures. Amy is part Colombian. I was like, what am I going to do? Marnie had a paisley silk sheath around the bodice. And paisley's just a throwback to an Indian wedding, to the background, but still very Western, very white, very big dress that says, the classic American dream dress. And but I wanted that there. And it was important that Kiki had some like tattooing on her hands because I want to show the culture. So I always do think of their clothes, especially in the wedding story, The Secret to Happy Couples, just show the culture in there. So we don't just hear their names, Chloe, Amy, Kiki, and think, oh, they're all white blondes. Like they are not. They're curvy, biracial girls. My name is Kaylin, so I don't I like using American names. It just feels more real to me. But yeah, that's why I think of their clothes. And then
Did you
doing
feel like maybe the audience won't guess why having biracial characters is important to you, but could you say that just a little bit about why that's important to you?
sure, yes, because I'm biracial, my mom is West Indian and my dad is basic white American, but you can also say European descent, but way back through the great grandparents and beyond. So growing up, I did not see a lot of representation of myself anywhere. And anytime you did see representation, you would like walk through the door in like the sitcom or whatever it is and immediately be hit with that culture. Whereas if you come through the door in my house, it's going to look like a regular, normal American household. You're not going to know West Indian just like that off the top of your head. Maybe if
You
you
gotta
like
wait for her mom to cook you something. That's what
yeah,
you're gonna say.
right. And so it's important to represent those kind of people because I don't see it enough. So I make sure all of my characters have different backgrounds and I want to make it clearer and clearer because I fell into like the white author trap of like I would write the book but not describe the characters enough and then so people would default to white. So I have to like shoehorn in tan and then they're like, "Oh, a white person who went to the tanning bed," and I was like, "No, no, no, tan skin, guys. It's a thing. It's a
So
thing."
I wake up, I swear to you, I could wake up, not go outside, and still look like this. Unlike Ansley, who's just gonna look like some pasty white girl with her blonde hair and her blue eyes. Yeah. So yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, um it is very important. It has been kind of really eye opening for me in certain ways to read your work, to watch your work grow in that because some of your really early work, which by the way, go pick up Tapestry on sale. You will not know the race of any of those characters because I think you put so many of those are such universal things where like they fall in love or they have a relative that's just an absolute insane witch.
Yes, yes, I do think tapestry was a learning curve, and I do think that is why I was like, "Oh, I have to specify biracial," because in my mind, I always default to my
Every
race.
single one is
So they're
yeah.
all brown to me, and then people are like, "Are they? They're white, right?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." So
I
I
mean,
had to.
to be fair, like because we were friends, I did see all of them as biracial because like I knew, like I knew you were drawing inspiration from your own experiences a little bit, but also like these were clearly characters, some of the female characters, especially as feminist as they are extensions of you. And I know that you're feminist, so I like clearly saw that clearly saw you in all of them. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is what my buddy is up to. And then other people, and I was like, oh, maybe should have noticed that. Maybe I'm a bad critique partner, So,
Yeah, so hopefully, when the new collection comes out, it's more obvious that there are biracial people in there. And so, and not only like the clothes to represent different cultures, but Chloe goes on a lot of dates. I had to come up with a lot of date outfits for a pretty girl. And you're like, that can't be hard. It is in writing. To be like, this is the new stunning way she looked. Especially to describe like her crazy behavior, I think was important because she is crazy. You know, she caused a car accident. To give the audience an example, she caused a car accident and then showed up to some other
Don't try
guy's
to
house
count.
like, I need help fixing my car for no reason. And so I liked that she was very like pretty. So I also like biracial prettiness. And not that typical blonde stereotype you see sometimes in movies where they're like, she's the most stunning one, and she's always like the blonde one. So, to
Are you
see her.
talking about Wicked? Are we talking about Ariana Grande and how they made her blonde in Wicked?
No, see her, I don't even mind as much. But if you ever watch She's Out of My League or like any of those, like the whole character personality is that she's a pretty girl, they always pick an incredibly tall, like 5'11" blonde woman who can like be at eye level with the guy she's dating. And I'm like, I don't know who's that
Or
representing.
the short blonde chick, right? Like in Legally Blonde or Clueless or whatever.
Mm,
Like we're just yes, it's such an archetype. I mean, this as a blonde haired, blue eyed woman, having those cultural expectations and like I feel like, oh, were you a cheerleader? No. I mean, I am. Like I am very positive terms with girlfriends, right? And but no, I wasn't a cheerleader. I was a basketball player. I was a swimmer. I had other interests other than just, gymnastics and cheerleading and ballet and all those girly
yeah.
things. I was a little bit more so like it was really weird. And then like stereotype. It was really difficult to fight back against. But yeah, I get it. I get why you don't want to have like a blonde haired, blue eyed person and you're like, yeah, maybe I'll just skip that. Maybe I'll just have something a little bit more me. But I think that's
Right.
normal.
And so, but and then still make her look really pretty and kind of sexy.
Okay.
So that way they
Well,
put up. Are you still there? So they put up with her crazy behavior. Um because like I was like, yeah, she's going to seduce them into just dealing with this and fixing the car and being no questions as to why the car is completely smashed up. It's
I
fine.
my
It's
internet
normal.
connection is unstable. Yeah. So
Okay. So are you having Oh, she's having connection problems.
am I
Are
back
you
yet?
back?
Am I back? Can you hear me now?
I can. I wasn't sure if you were gone because I could still see you.
Yeah, but
But
I'm frozen. Yeah. You guys don't freeze. I freeze for you. And it's crazy.
okay.
All right. So it's like getting that time of day where everybody in my neighborhood apparently logs on to check their email. So I guess we're just gonna have to wrap this up. But yeah, I
Okay.
think representation is important. And I think having fabulous clothes is important. And I think it's really interesting though that clearly I'm more into story and you're more into clothing. And that's what makes us friends is like, oh, I didn't like if I noticed the plot point
Well,
and you noticed the clothes. And
it's
designers
character driven. I love characters. I love to dissect
and I
them.
think it's really interesting that we don't notice you only notice it when it's off. That's what I have to say. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
I love character driven work. I love dissecting characters and their motivations and why they do the crazy things they do. And then I'm like, okay, let's give them a plot. Whereas I think you do mystery and you start with a plot. And I do think she's disappeared,
All right.
guys.
Am I live yet?
All right. So are you ending it so you can stop being so pixelated? Bye. It was nice chatting.
Sorry about my internet. All right. We'll just sign off and see you next time. Okay.